Okay, hi everyone. So I just want to take some time to explain how I would like to um, work on the language training with um, individuals, like one-on-one or in small groups. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the program's going to look like. Um, so I've been um, tutoring, teaching, training, working with language for about 15 plus years now. I started just with tutoring and then I decided to um, study it as my main studies. And then I was just training different groups and individuals in English as a second language and Arabic as a second language. That's it. I tried to experiment learning other languages just to see how it works. Um, so I really do like languages. I've done a little bit of exam preparation as well. And then with Arabic, not so much, not a lot of exam preparation there, but different skills like in, listening, speaking, writing, reading, things like that. Um, so that's kind of what I used to do. So it it's not that difficult to learn a language if you find like a good program. So it took me a while to decide to create something a little more personalized or unique after I've seen a lot of people's experiences learning and what's been working and what's not working. And it's not that things don't work, they just have specific outcomes, especially if you're following a book. Then what happens is you end up learning the book, not learning how to use the language in general. So my favorite groups were like the lower levels, like people who have never used the language before, because then you could see how they progress over time. So I've kept contact with many people that I've worked with before to see where they're at now. And it's amazing. It's amazing when things kind of are given time, then you see a lot of progress. So I don't want to talk about too many details now, but know that there has been a lot of like um, observing like from my behalf to see kind of what worked and what didn't. Um, so I didn't really put a lot of information in this slide. I'm trying to make it seem like a listening activity, which is one of the skills when we're teaching language. Um, Definitely start with listening. So see if you can just listen and follow along. Maybe, I don't know, take some notes. Um, Kind of pretend like this is already like kind of like your first class, and then see if you can summarize things in points or um, what your summary would look like in comments below, or if you can, um, yeah, see if you can see how much you can understand from this message um, in your target language. So I've worked in different places, Toronto, Qatar, and I was going to do classes in Egypt. I was there for a while, but I did just a little bit of observation, um, not um, not teaching yet. However, we did have a lot of Egyptian students in Qatar, so it did feel like it was um, a similar experience. So mostly in Canada and Qatar, and then yeah, and then oh yeah, so then there were like one-on-one groups, small groups, larger groups. I think the biggest group I taught was maybe 20 to 25 people in a class. I didn't like those too much unless I had time to like prepare the activities way ahead of time so that once they come in, they're already practicing. Um, so I think the smaller the group, sometimes it's better. Worked in like centers and then individually and in companies. I think that was very interesting when we're doing language for specific purposes. Okay, so what I'm trying to do in this program is to incorporate a lot of the like raw research in language into the program. So the first question people ask is, what book are we following? And I say, we can definitely have a book as a guide, but because there's still ongoing research, we want to use activities that are based on the raw research itself. So I'll explain in a bit how that works. But also, what I found interesting lately is that you could keep researching and researching as like a language teacher, and you'll just find that the research is endless, but that um, historically, there wasn't a lot of language research. You kind of just immerse, like you go to a place where people speak the language and eventually you pick it up. And that's how some of the research started. It's like, hey, how is it that you could just go somewhere and just kind of soak in language? So I think a lot of the research is just descriptive in how it's like it talks about how the brain soaks in language and things like that. But what the part that I like from the research and that's relevant to me is activities that have worked before. So things that people have researched and tested with um, a number of students over time. So I like to use those. These are usually the only things that I research. So once I sit with a student, we're practicing right away. Okay, so try to summarize my program in a little code. And basically, I try to get someone to practice 3 times a day. Okay, very short duration, um, not more than like 10 minutes. Um, Repetitive activities, not repetitive like like parroting or like getting bored with repetition, but there's a lot of research on how to repeat things and when to repeat them, and that's what language um, research is all about. It's like you need to repeat what you've used in the language so that they become more automatic and ready for you to find when you need it. So something that's daily, and I'm hoping we could do about 3 activities a day as opposed to homework and writing, things and then handing it in. No, I would just like to practice things throughout the day. And the idea behind that is that the more you spread the language in your day, the more it seems like, hey, one day I'll be able to just incorporate this into my day because that's how we use language. We use it throughout the day. Um, and then I'd like to have 4 meetings in a month where we are practicing the activities. Um, I used to feel like there was a lot of lecturing before, but it's not really necessary because either the person doesn't understand you when you're lecturing in the target language, or it's a waste of time because we're not really practicing the material. So I like to have 4 meetings, 4 practices, or coaching, whatever you want to call it, and then in between we could be like corresponding with the target language. So either pick an app where we can text or have like a joint group on any of the social media platforms. I don't like all of them, but just we can pick one that we can use throughout the week, and then maybe emailing and voice noting and stuff. And this will all be organized. Um, so more practice, less lecturing. And then I'd like to have 2 general practice assessments throughout the month. So I'll get you to maybe talk to someone or go somewhere and then use the vocabulary and the grammar that we've been, that was embedded in the activities, and then have a feedback session about how that worked. So that's kind of a summary of how I want to run things. And let's see if there's any comments here. Oh, yes. The reason why the classes are not that many in a week is because I'm not the only person that you're going to use the language with. So we want to involve other people that you're going to use the language with. And the more people you can communicate with, that's one of the goals, that you're going to use the language with different people. Okay, so we want the material to be relevant to your life. Again, a lot of books are great and they have different topics in life. And we can definitely have one, and I'm kind of working on one as well. But the biggest theme that I like to revolve around is work. Work and kind of like the main thing that you do in your life. But I really like to just focus on how it's gonna enhance your job, basically. Why is that? Because it's just part of my values to like feel like I'm training language because it's something that's gonna affect someone's work. If it's just your life and like your friends and family, I think everyone's entitled to learn language. And then I think I'm gonna section a time in my day where we're just like kind of playing with the language and doing things for free, because it's just a social goal. I don't know. I feel like too many services are monetized, and then we're not really leaving, economy and the money where I feel like it should be. So I don't know if this makes sense, but I can explain it a bit later. Um, I don't feel like language teaching in general needs to be fully monetized, because you could go somewhere and live with a family or be around a family where they're just going to speak the language and you learn it for free. So why is it that we take it and make it all paid? So I don't know. I'm kind of in between. um, I'm just thinking about things out loud, but I'd rather keep work with work. So whatever it is your field is, how is adding a language going to enhance that part of your life? Of course, we can bring in other things like travel and daily life and things like that, but mostly focusing on work. So yeah, I definitely really enjoy just socializing about language and like having conversation partners. So that is something I want to do in the afternoons or maybe the evenings, where if you just feel like practicing, in a laid back environment, then we'll do that um, later in the day. And then in the morning, we'll leave that for like serious language learning and activities and things. Can you learn alone? Definitely, and that's why
Telefonen. Telefonen.
So yes, I think you can learn alone, and I think that Um, I want to emphasize the activities before the coaching sessions or the practice sessions, because if you can get into a role of practicing the language, then you don't always need someone there. Like, yeah, you always need someone to practice with, but no one should be your, no one should, your um, dependence should be on yourself first, basically. Duration. So I think that with language, um, it's hard to um, define a learning time, but in general, people have divided language into 6 to 8 levels, and we could stick to that. But again, like language has many, many different levels and many different usages and types of vocabulary. So we could spend 2 months in one kind of level, and then it would take a year to um, feel like, okay, I can actually like function independently with this language. So that's usually most of like a lot of language programs would, try to use that duration. There's intensive classes and stuff, but again, intensive doesn't mean you'll be able to catch things automatically from your brain when you need it. So um, let's say 2 months per level. Our first meeting is just going to be a discussion of motivation levels, your time, how busy you are, so that when I'm creating the activity, it's kind of like following the flow of your life, and it's not something extra or a subject that's like stressful and an addition to your day. It's just something that we want to like embed into your day. And then the biggest thing that I've learned throughout the years is that motivation goes up and down, but we need to find a way to, for us both to just like power through and get 2 months done, and um not like fall into like distractions and things like that. So really, really, like we really would like to explore in the first meeting how, like, what level of motivation do you have for learning the language? Because some people are like, oh, it's just, something extra that I'm doing, but some people are like, no, it's super crucial at this point for my kind of work or life mission or something. So wherever your motivation is, we will match that. So even if you say, oh, I'm just doing it for fun, then we'll just do it for fun and not like, you know, overdo it. Um, yeah, this is also a hot topic in language research. Can you define and like score things with numbers and things like that? And I'd say kind of, not really. Measurability to me in language learning is how quickly you can apply the stuff to your life when you need it. So like you learn new words and then you go somewhere, can you actually like recall the words that you learned? So that's the way we can measure it. And there's also levels in that, like you can recognize it and then you can use it. So maybe you're like, yeah, I recognize the word when I see it, but I don't remember it automatically. So there is measurability there. And there's also, if you look in the PDF with that explains the program, there will just be a place where you can just tick off the fact that you just did the activities. That's a good way to measure that, hey, I've been actually practicing. So you don't have to force remember things with language, because it is sort of a natural process over time, but you can definitely increase and measure how much you've been practicing. And that's it for now. Thank you very much for listening.